It's Wednesday, April 19th, 2023, and that means it's time for Tampa Bay Devil Rays talk with Eno and Big Al. This is the Big Al the equation. Oh, I'm sorry, let me start again. I've been in Central Florida for the past 2 weeks watching a lot of Tampa baseball with my Tampa Bay Rays dad, who's just nuts about them. So I still got a little bit of Rays on the brain right now. So let me start that again. Welcome to the Knee Jerks Detroit Sports Talk with Eno and Big Al. I'm the Big Al the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me, as always, is my fellow Rays fan. No, my Detroit sports expert friend, a man who has a Rolodex thicker than the Bible, and that would be Greg Eno. Of the Out of Bounds blog. And you had some news about all that kind of stuff we'll talk about. So, Greg, what's up? It's been a while. It's been almost a month.
Yeah, it has been. Al, as he mentioned briefly there, was in Florida visiting his father, and as he should. And he had had a good time down there, and I was glad that
I'm a good boy. I'm a good son.
Absolutely. And glad you got a chance to do that. And so we're back with you. We have a special guest tonight. Our good friend City Hall, our NBA stats guru, will be here. And I can promise you that City is coming in hot tonight. He is coming in hot, and you're going to enjoy that as we break down the Pistons season, talk about the Dwayne Casey situation, and touch a little bit on the NBA playoffs.
Right.
But mostly keep the focus on the Pistons themselves. We'll be in a pre-recorded interview. We'll be playing that for you today. 2 weeks from tonight, our good friend Mike Shoddy will be breaking down the NFL draft, which is going to be taking place not this coming weekend, but the weekend.
A week from tomorrow. It's a week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow. Okay, yeah. Yes. So when Mike comes on, the draft will be very fresh. We'll talk about the draft with him on May 2nd. And the other big news is that I kind of sundowning, if you will, my WordPress blog and moving to Substack. The address is gregeno.substack.com. For now, we'll be doing a free subscription model, but I hope to maybe venture out into more of a paid subscription model. So please subscribe while it is free. gregeno.substack.com, and you'll still get new content every Monday. So that's the other thing I like to plug. But other than that news and the news of the guests, Al, real brief, how was your trip to Florida?
Honestly, the weather was far nicer than my last trip down there when I was there for like the 2 weeks of winter Florida gets. The best news of the trip was my father, 82, is prostate cancer free. That was one of the main reasons I was down there, to be with him when he was talking to the doctors. And it was something else, because when we were headed to the doctor's office for this visit, get results, and he's like, "Al, I'm expecting the worst. Oh my God, I don't know. I'm really not confident." And the doctor says, "You're 100% cancer free." Like, oh my God. Okay, Dad. Positive thinking. So much for positive thinking working here. But he's doing pretty darn well. And the Rays getting off to the start that they've gotten, he's giddy. It's funny. He loves the Tampa Bay Rays. And while watching games of him, I found out his all-time favorite ball player, Kevin Kiermaier.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and it broke his heart when he went to Toronto. Because that's what Tampa does. When someone's about to get paid, they either trade him or let him walk in free agency.
Right.
So, but fun. It was a nice trip. We had prime rib for Easter. It was which I had to do all the cooking, because I'm not asking my 82-year-old father and 76-year-old stepmom to cook that kind of a meal. But it was a really nice trip. I was kind of disappointed we didn't get to talk. We missed the show because we weren't able to talk about opening day and all that. But it was worth the time, and I'll plan to probably be back down there in about 3 months. So,
okay.
But honestly, Greg, this is big news. You get going into Substack. I mean, that's the new blogging, I think, at this point.
Yeah, our good friend Ron Mott, I think, got me thinking about that, and other people have mentioned it to me, and so and I noticed that there are a lot of folks that are doing it now, and why not? I mean, we'll give it a shot and see.
Yeah, I do subscribe to a lot of free ones. I do pay for a couple, so there is worthwhile things to be found in the, I guess, the newsletter realm now rather than the blogging.
Right.
You know, it's like blogging is so 2006, I think. So
Well, you know what it is
anymore.
too. I'm finding out that the Substack model isn't just for writers; it's for all sorts of different types of artists.
Yeah.
And it's more than just writing. I'm finding out, but the more I'm learning about it, the more excited I am to.
Well, I'm subscribed, so we'll see what happens here. But I'm looking. Well, I guess I'll put 2 links in the show notes for the time being. One to the Out of Bounds blog, and one to Greg's Substack. So interesting to say the least. So big doings over the past month.
And by the way, the other nice thing about the Substack thing is if you do subscribe, obviously that means that you will receive in your inbox every week. To the email address you provide my content, so you don't have to go looking for it anymore. You don't have to go searching for it on the internet.
Or waiting for you to post a link or any of that kind of stuff. Exactly. It comes to you. Plus, Substack also has a phone app as well.
Yes, that's true.
And now I know they have Substack notes, so you can start your own little Twitter-like discussions on the Substack app, or whatever you want to call the ecosystem, wherever you want to call it. So there's a lot of stuff going on at Substack. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I think it's time to play the birthday game, I believe.
Oh, that's right. My goodness, how could I forget about
it's been a month. We're all discombobulated here. So
let's play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I'll give Al a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. If Al can correctly guess that person within the first 2 clues, to celebrate my Substack move here, he will receive a Greg Eno bobblehead doll. So,
is it going to be holding a typewriter or something, or have a fedora press pass stuck in the brim? Yeah.
Now I can't promise it's going to look like me because no bobblehead doll ever looks like the person that picked him. But
yeah, really.
This person, Al, made his name in the world of baseball. He was born on this date in 1960. He's an East Coaster. He was born in New York, and you can tell whenever he talks that he was born in New York. But he made his name not in New York. He played he did play a couple years in New York, but he played majority of his career in the American League. What I guess you'd call it the American League Central now, but it wasn't that when he played there. And he's a pitcher, and he was a Cy Young Award winner in 1988.
Oh, American League, 1988. Oh God, this is one of those ones that should be right in my wheelhouse. I mean, I get some really obscure ones right off the bat sometimes, and all of a sudden the 1988 Cy Young winner, I'm drawing a goddamn blank on. Oh, especially he'd be right around our age for that matter. So a hair older than me and a little bit older than you.
Right.
Oh God, 1988 American League Cy Young. There's a couple. I'm picturing a couple things that because there's been some really oddball Cy Young winners. Especially back in the day, where they weren't looking at metrics at all. They were just looking at wins. Period.
Right. Steve Stone, 1980 was probably one of the better examples.
Yeah. So. 1988. God. I'm just going to pass. I'm going to have to think about this. Like I said, it's been a month, and I'm trying to get my brain working again. And I'm trying to get the cobwebs. There's probably bats flying around up there, for Christ's sake. So I will pass on that. We'll come back to that. To the next question, question 2, where Greg can get. So I'm desperate for that bobblehead. So we'll see what happens. But with that, we have some. I guess why don't you introduce our friend of the show who's going to talk NBA.
City Hall has been a regular on this program for the last couple of years, talking NBA and Pistons, and we felt like this was a great time to have him on at the end of the season, and it was even made more newsworthy by the fact that the Pistons have changed coaches in recent days, and so City's got a lot to say about that and a lot more to say about the current GM, Troy Weaver. Like I said, he comes in hot, so let's play that. Let's play that pre-recorded interview for you right now.
Yeah, I think I have the name for this podcast. It's going to be Fire Troy Weaver with a question mark. Because he came in hot with that. He honestly, though, he makes a compelling case. I don't think he deserves to be fired yet at all. But I think we're reaching the point where this team needs to turn a corner, and it better do it really damn soon. Because he has made he has made a lot of moves, and that has the salary cap's been cleaned up. There are some young talent here, but this is still a really, really bad team. And I'm not quite there. We'll talk about this later. I'm not there with Steve Yzerman yet, but he's another GM that we need to start seeing more progress. Year 4, year 5, you need to start turning things around rather than being a lottery team. So I can understand where City's coming from.
The more I think about this, and the more I think back, and I'm sticking strictly to the Pistons for right now. When I think back to from the moment they hired, and I know everybody knows the Pistons haven't won a playoff game since 2008, but it's not even really about that. When I look back to the moment they hired Stan Van Gundy in 2014 to now, which is some 9 years later.
God, it's been that long ago since Van Gundy was here. Good Lord.
Since they hired him. When you thinking back in these past 9 years, and that's why some of these guys are gone, but when you think back to the past 9 years, Al, how many times has a Piston executive?
Yeah.
Now, I guess you could go even before Van Gundy too, as far as this goes.
Yeah.
When was the last time a Pistons executive really made the team demonstratively better?
Yeah.
I mean, better. I mean, it seems like what the best we've been able to do with these guys, the Van Gundys of the world, and even Weaver in the case that City laid out, it seems like the best we can do with these guys is just break even. Yeah. It's just have moves that are just lateral moves that aren't.
Yeah.
You almost consider it a win if the moves they make don't hurt the team. There's never really any move that has been made. I can't think of a move or a series of moves that have been made in the past X number of years that have really made the team better. I mean, tangibly better. It really hasn't been. And it's not, like you said, it hasn't been for lack of moves. I'm not talking about the sheer quantity of moves. If you went by just quantity of moves, the Pistons would be 4-time NBA champion. Right. I'm talking about the quality of their moves. If just going back, Van Gundy probably even a little bit before, and Dumars's last couple of years to now, they just seem to be spinning their wheels.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was funny. I was obviously Van Gundy. I believe he's working for TNT now, and he's calling playoff games.
Yeah.
And the other night he said, if I had drafted Devin Booker, I'd still be coaching. So, that could be very true because I really like Van Gundy as a coach, but he was a horrible GM.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see where we go with this when it comes to Weaver. But yeah, it's that first draft gave him a lot of goodwill, plus clearing up the salary cap. Now it's like I said, it's now to make this a team. And obviously, I think he gets a bit of a pass because of what happened to Cade Cunningham. And so much lies on this upcoming draft lottery because it really looks like a 2-man draft, then maybe a couple other guys the next level down, and then whatever. So they can't get red-winged in this draft. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and like City says, that those second contracts, anybody can sign. Because like he said, when you those rookie contracts are pretty much slotted in. You're really not doing much negotiating whatsoever.
Right, exactly.
It's these second contracts where the decision making gets a lot more difficult, more dicey, and not only that, but can have really far-reaching implications for your franchise if you don't get them right.
Exactly. All right. With that, let's get to question 2 of the birthday game.
Again, made his name in the world of baseball. 1988 Cy Young winner, lefty. I will tell you that he was also the 1987 World Series MVP. So he had a couple of really good years there in a row. Playing for the same team, by the way. Went over to the Mets for a couple of years. Came back to the American League for the Red Sox for a couple of years. And what else can I tell you? He's in the Twins Hall of Fame.
Oh, God. I should know this. I know it's not Bert Blyleven because he doesn't fit the timeline.
He's lefty, too.
Yeah, and a lefty. Exactly. So, shoot, I should know this. especially when you're talking the 87 playoffs and all that, like which torture me to this day. The Tigers were the best team in baseball without a doubt that year. But as I say, the playoffs are a gauntlet of randomness, according to Billy Bean. Oh, God, I think I can picture him, but I can't come up with a name. So you're just gonna have to. I'll pay for the bobblehead. But
yes, you will.
I'm just gonna pass, and hopefully I get the gimme. So
okay.
With that, let's move on to the topics du jour. Obviously, we'll touch on. There's been some Tigers news since we last talked. The Red Wings season ended, so there's been a little bit of a postmortem there. What's going on with Steve Yzerman and them, and the Lions made a big trade, which kind of fell under the cracks a little bit. But let's start with the Tigers because they're talk about a up-down season, so to speak, and it said volumes about the start of this team that the weather seemed to make more news than anybody on the team or the team itself over this past weekend for some very questionable postponements, especially the Sunday. Major League Baseball and the Tigers postponed the start of the 1 p.m. game against the Giants. And we got to remember, this is an interleague game, so this was probably the only time they're going to play the Giants this year. There's not another series where you can make it up. And what was ridiculous, the rain never. I know here where I live, I'm about 35 minutes south of Detroit. I got one rainstorm about 3 in the afternoon, and that lasted about 15 minutes. I think Detroit went through something similar, but a 5+ hour delay before they finally called the game. That is ridiculous. That's very anti-fan. That's anti anything good when you just make people hang for that damn long. So they finally called the game about 6 o'clock in the evening, after 6, which was ridiculous. And they could have got that game in hell, they could have got it in that evening. Then the next day, Greg, pretty much the same thing happened. The night game against the Guardians was called in the early afternoon, rescheduled to be a part of yesterday's doubleheader, which became a doubleheader, I should say, due to a combination of cold weather, high winds, and mixed precipitation. It's Michigan in April. It's not going to get any better than that.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to schedule, this is what gets me about baseball, Greg, when it comes to scheduling. They know what weather's going to be like in places like Detroit, in Minnesota, in New York, in Boston, in Chicago.
Yeah.
If you think this is going to be a huge issue, schedule the teams down south, schedule them on the West Coast for a couple weeks, and then bring them. I can understand delays, but the Saturday delay was really, from according to the meteorologists I've read online, they had said we got the forecast wrong. That's essentially we thought it was going to rain, and it didn't. But Monday was it's too cold. Good Lord, I don't know, Greg. It's just that sometimes I think the way Major League Baseball handles postponements and cancellations and rain delays, weather shit, they do not handle it right because it's so opaque. You don't know what the hell is going on. Fans in the stands didn't know anything was going on for hours, other than the occasional tweet from a beat writer saying, "I don't know." So, I know it's not a huge deal in the big scheme of things when it comes of a season, but the way these were treated was just so anti-fan. That's what got my goat.
Yeah, agreed. The delaying that long.
Yes.
Either way, even if you're going to play, I mean, a delay of that length it's just too long.
Yes,
it's just too long.
I could see it for the playoffs or something
right
big. But a game in April, come on.
Well, right, and we're talking of not only that, but and I know that it's against the Giants, who are typical, who don't make another appearance here at all. So any makeup game would have to be done. That can be tricky too, because now you got to find an open day. You're talking about a team that it's 3,000 miles away almost.
Yeah.
So now you got to figure out, okay, when can they get back in here?
Yep.
I've seen it where sometimes they'll even play the game there.
Yeah,
exactly. Like if the Tigers are they find an open date, like if the Tigers are out west in Oakland or something, they might just say, look, I know this is supposed to be a home game. I think they did it last year or the year before where the
Yeah, I've
Tigers
heard
were
that has happened. You are
yeah,
right.
where you're the home team in a different ballpark or something
Yeah.
like that. But so yeah, and I know, so I get it. It's not like it's not like it was against the Guardians or somebody who you're going to see a million times,
Right.
and you can make it up like they did this time right away the next day.
Yeah.
But so I get that part. You want to get it, give it a shot. You know, you want to get that game in because you're talking about a team that's not going to come back here at all, and so.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it just even yeah, it's anti-fan, but it's also anti-player. I mean,
Yes.
it's too long. That's too long to be hanging out.
Yeah, they were stuck in the locker room for like 8 hours that day.
Yeah, I don't get it either. It's kind of weird too, Al, because the supposedly the technology to forecast weather, especially short-term forecasting weather. We're only talking about looking ahead for the next 3 to 5 hours.
Right.
That technology has gotten so much better.
Yeah.
Theoretically has gotten better. That it's why can't they be more prescriptive about okay, I see a front coming in. It just seems like there should be better awareness of what's going on when you've got this technology that can predict stuff
right
pretty accurately versus what it used to be. So yeah, I agree. It wasn't a good look for sure.
Yeah, and unfortunately, nothing's going to change. It's just how baseball handles these things. They handle them horribly, and I think fans would feel better. Just tell them what's going on. Just let them know. You know, I think there was I think during that a whole 5+ hours, there was like one update, and that update is we're going to let you know more at 3:15. Then that came along and says we're still in a delay. That at that point, if I was there that day, I would have just went home. It's those people wasted the Sunday. And at the very least, I've read that the Tigers know they screwed up, and they're going to try and do a make good of these people when it comes to their tickets. Not just they may get like another game along with the makeup game supposedly. So we'll see how they handle it. But yeah, it was a complete, for lack of a better word, shit show from start to finish. Both days, if you ask me. If you're cold, deal with it. Put on an extra layer. That's what I do when I'm at the cabin. Put on a layer. Layer up. Then suck it up.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little baseball, though. Let's start with they're starting to play some better baseball, but before that happened, we had Austin Meadows has had another mental health break. I don't know how you want to call it. He needs to step away from the game again for the second time in less than a year to focus on, as the Tigers press release said, to focus on his mental health. And so he was placed on the 10-day IL. The Tigers issued the statement that was fully in support of Meadows. We don't know what's going on. They just said anxiety. And I think we've all been there at one time or another. I couldn't imagine some of the crap that any kind of professional athlete has to deal with on a daily basis. When you're performing in front of thousands of people, when you're being called God knows what online, on Twitter or on Facebook or on Reddit or whatever, because you struck out one time. I'm surprised we just don't hear about more of this, that there's guys battle, and it's become a little more commonplace. But regardless of all that, Meadows needs to take a timeout to get himself mentally right, whatever that may be. But this is what got me, Greg, is that when you have the fans, Larry, I'm using scare quotes, they really expose themselves as deplorables, as SOBs, as unsympathetic assholes. I know you spent a lot of time on Twitter. I'm sure you saw a lot of the idiot fans on social media claiming, he's mentally weak. Oh, he's a bad player. He's faking. He wants to force a trade. He should be traded because he's weak. He's not strong. He should fight through it because I have to fight through stuff. He shouldn't be coddled. Blah, blah, blah. It's ridiculous. It was very hateful. It was miserable rhetoric.
Right.
And what's worse, though, it's not a surprise. That's what, that's what got me. Reactions like this is why more people don't talk about their mental health or don't get treated for their mental health issues. Don't seek out therapy. Don't want, that's something that's got me about this country, Greg. We're so focused on bootstraps that oftentimes those bootstraps aren't connected to anything, if you know what I'm saying. And these guys and people are left wandering in the wilderness trying to figure out, why am I not mentally right? So Austin Meadows, at the very least, he knows there's something wrong. He has access to treatment. He's getting support for that treatment. I say more power to him for getting that treatment. The ball club be damned. Because I would say that about anybody in any work position. If you need to take a break because of your mental health, who am I to say what is or isn't a mental struggle, if you know what I'm saying?
Well, you're right. I wrote a piece about this last week, comparing, even though they're totally different situations. I get it. Well, I don't know how different they really are, but I recalled, if folks, by the way, and I'm not saying this to plug my own stuff, but you do go to gregeno.substack.com and look at my piece about Austin Meadows that was published last week, and read about Tony Horton. His story is so fascinating to me. Tony Horton, real quick, for people who don't know, was a very burgeoning young big first baseman for the Indians, who was putting up tremendous numbers. And in the 1970 season, he just lost it mentally, and he took himself out of a game. This is a long story short. He took himself out of a game in late August and never played again. He was only 25, 26 years old, never played again. Alvin Dark, who was the manager of the Indians at the time, wrote a book, his autobiography. And Dark said it was the worst thing he's ever seen in baseball, because Tony Horton had so much potential. He was on top of the world in terms of his numbers, his production. He was one of the slugging first basemen in the certainly in the American League. And he just all of a sudden just had some personal demons. And the reason I brought up Horton was because back then, to your point about folks saying, well, he's weak and I have to suffer through it and suck it up, all this stuff. That's key. I likened it to the way that we treated concussions back in the day. The same kind of a scenario where, just you got your bell rung, sit out a few plays, go back in there and play if it was football. And the Tony Horton thing, you got to think that back then, the 1970s, those teams did not have the access to these kinds of, and I'm happy to say that more and more companies in corporate America are making mental wellness, are bringing mental wellness higher and higher up on the totem pole when it comes to importance, when it comes to offering benefits to people. Part of the healthcare benefits now for a lot of companies are some degree of mental health benefit as well, where you can seek help. You can, of course, anonymously, you can talk to people, and those kinds of things just weren't available to guys like Tony Horton back in the day. And I'm not saying that if Tony Horton had the same situation happen to him today, that he wouldn't still have walked out on the team, but he may have been able to come back. He may have been able to get professional help, and I don't know enough about Horton's situation to know if he did indeed seek that. But regardless, when you walk away, take yourself out of a ball game when you're 25 years old and never play again in the big leagues, that's alarming. And that is absolutely alarming. And so, but you're right. I think the sadder part about that was about what you're talking about, but the reaction to Meadows was indeed it's predictability. And I almost didn't want to read the comments. Of course, a vast majority of people, Al, were in support of Meadows. Let's not paint this the wrong way. But what gets me about that nastiness you're talking about is that so many people in this country themselves either have had these kind of issues or know somebody in their family who have had these kinds of issues. And so I'm wondering where the empathy is. And the only thing I can think of is that there's still this class warfare against professional, not just athletes, anybody who makes a lot of money. It's like, well, making a lot of money should make everything go away. It should make everything all better, because
if I was rich, I'd have no problems, essentially.
If I made $25 million a year, I wouldn't care what kind of mental state I'm in. Well, that's a bunch of baloney, of course. So I think what we're talking about really, Al, is class warfare still when it comes to fans looking at professional athletes who make that kind of money, and just because they make that money, that they should be immune to regular human emotions, and that they should not be treated as people, that they're just these machines that go out there and perform for you come hell or high water. And I'm sad that we're still at that point now. Athletes have been making money, Al, Athletes have been making big time money in all the sports for about 40 to 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say big money, I mean considerably big money,
Right.
bigger money than what a regular 9 to 5 guy makes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're still 40, 50 years later now, we're still not over it. There's still a lot of people, excuse me, who can't wrap their heads around the fact that the high salaries are part of professional sports, and it's not going away.
Yeah.
It's not going away. The Jalen Hurts extension that he signed with the Eagles, 5 years, $255 million or whatever it was, it doesn't bother me. I could care less.
Not my money.
A lot of people that just, they can't, for whatever reason, and they've been following sports forever, and they still get their panties in a bunch over guys making big time money.
Yeah.
And so what happens is when these kinds of situations occur, like the Tigers experienced last year with Meadows and with Eduardo Rodriguez, who walked away from the team for a while.
Yeah.
We just don't feel like there's any justification for it whatsoever. And you mentioned it at the top of the discussion. Some of the examples of people of what they were saying, and it drives me crazy. But like you said, it was totally predictable. You knew you were going to read those kind of comments.
Yep.
But thankfully, though, like I said, they were in the vast minority.
They're out there. Yeah, because when this goes down, one of the guys I thought of was Zach Greinke, who essentially missed an entire season of his career. I believe he was in his early 20s, due to anxiety and depression.
Yep.
And he's got treatment. I believe he got anti-anxiety drugs, and he became he's still pitching today. And he became a very, very, very productive pitcher for several teams, including the Royals, with who he was pitching for at the time. So I hate to use the term fix, but you can get fixed or you get treated. And because Austin Meadows is a legit MLB ball player. He could hit. He would be a plus on this team. But it's get yourself right, because if you continue to, if he comes back before he's ready, or he feels like he's forced to come back, it's just going to be a vicious cycle, and I just want the guy to get right. And I just hate people who, because I'm someone with a disability myself with my back. If you're watching this in video, you notice I can't turn my head at all. My spine is completely fused due to arthritis. And I used to get comments, "What's the matter with you?" People can be so insensitive.
Yes.
I would, especially right before I ended up having to go into disability, when I was working a shit ton of hours. I was opening stores for Starbucks, so I would open a store, go on to the next one, open another store, do the grand opening, move to another one.
Yeah.
And I was working 12, 16-hour days in a horrendous amount of pain. And yet I would have customers come up to me and goes, "What's the matter with you? Your back hurt?" Bullshit like that. And that comes with, and my disability compared to some others is relatively minor. I'm under control now. The pain is for the most part gone. It's been taken care of, but it's still visible that there's something the matter with me if you see me in person. But when it comes to mental health, you can't see what's going on inside someone's brain. Right. And you don't, and to just blurt out what you think is wrong or how they can be fixed or what they should do it's ignorant. It really, really is. Yeah. And I'm with you that I would say the majority of Tigers fans are very supportive. They understand. They're not idiots. Right. But there's always a vocal minority, and they are so goddamn loud. Well, we see it in politics too. We see it in entertainment. Hell, we see it in technology with people arguing about iOS or Android or Marvel versus DC, and it becomes so tribalistic, becomes so vicious. It becomes, I don't know. Sometimes I've wondered that I kind of miss the days, Greg, where the only news I got, I would be able to talk about the team was if I opened up the newspaper, and then I could make up my own mind, maybe talk to a buddy, on the phone or go to the corner bar or something like that. But now today, everybody feels like they have a megaphone and they have to get out there what they say. And the worst part is the dumbest people seem to be the loudest. And that's always bothers me on social media.
That's true.
And you put up with more than I do, because I got off of Twitter. I couldn't do it. I got tired of it. I couldn't do it anymore. I only went back to Facebook because of the pandemic, so I could stay in touch with people.
Right.
So, people just need to realize that disabilities, be it physical or be it a mental health issue, shut up. Shut up about it unless you've actually been through it, dealing with it yourself.
Yeah, and that's what I don't. I guess again, I come back to the fact that it touches so many people, and even if you yourself have never experienced it, chances are that either you know somebody tangentially who has, or somebody in your immediate family has battled such things. And that's what always gets me is and besides the class warfare thing, I think there still is that scarlet letter that comes with.
That's a good way to put it.
And it's too bad because, you know, it just seems like this is just another example where it just doesn't seem like we have evolved as a society as much as I would have hoped we would have had.
Right.
You know, for example, the Tony Horton thing, and I mentioned it because of the fact that I was talking about the types of resources that may have been available to him back then. But I also wonder, though, Al, I openly wonder how much we have really evolved as a society since the Tony Horton situation in 1970. You're right about the stupid people being the loudest, but the fact that there still are those people out there at all, I guess it just maybe that's just the way it is, and that's just we're just going to live with it, you know.
It's unfortunate to say the very least. All right, one more Tigers topic. We actually talk a little baseball rather than things around the game, and boneheaded base running benches Javy Baez. How's that for trying to get all the B's in there? But, well, it was more than Baez though. There was a couple games here where the fundamentals seemed to go out the window. And last week during the loss to Toronto, Eric Haas was this is a mistake you would get benched for in T-ball, where he was thrown out at third base trying to advance on a ground ball in front of him. I don't know what the hell he was thinking there. And then here another one, which is just as bad, if not worse. Matt Verlaine was thrown out attempting to steal second because he didn't slide. And I believe Haas just said it was a mental mistake, and Verlaine said he thought the ball was hit. He didn't realize it. But still, both are horrendous base running mistakes. It just can't happen. Next night, Baez was doubled off a second after taking off on a fly ball because he forgot the outs. He thought there were 2 outs instead of just 1. And having seen enough, indeed, to make an example, AJ Hinch pulled his $20 million a year shortstop out of the game, benched him for that game. I know there were some people calling Greg, they should bench him for the next game or sit him for a couple days, whatever. But he was back in the lineup the next day. And interestingly enough, the Tigers are now 5-1 since Javy Baez was benched. They won the game he got benched in. They had a 5-game winning streak. They lost today, but it was a very tight game. But that 5-1 stretch has included a doubleheader sweep and 3 consecutive walk-off victories. So I don't think we're going to put this in the categories of Jim Leyland's infamous 2006 tirade, where he just ripped into the team after they walk through a getaway day game early in April.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can really make much of it yet, if this is just a coincidence or what. But something clicked when Hinch kind of laid down the law. And smartly enough, when you do make a move like that, you have to make it to one of your star players. And if I remember right, in Leland's case, he went after Pudge Rodriguez. In this case, Hinch went after Javy Baez. The managers know they have to go after someone who, one, is a leader or highly paid or whatever, and 2 can take it. And, and honestly, this isn't the first time this has happened to Baez. It happened a couple years ago with the Mets. So, coincidence or not, something clicked because the Tigers are actually starting to play decent baseball. We'll put it that way. They're not. What were they, 2-9 at one point? I think they're 6-10 or something. 7-10 or something like that now. Far more respectable. So I don't know what Hinch did, but it seemed to work.
Well, that's true. But then, of course, the question begs, why did these things happen to begin with?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not necessarily blaming Hinch, of course, but I mean, why did these things happen? You mentioned,
Right.
and what we're talking about is, Haas, like you mentioned, being thrown out of third base and a ground ball where he's on second.
Yep.
Veerling not sliding into second base, trying to steal. The Baez thing about forgetting how many outs there were.
Yeah.
Now, Javy Baez is not the first player in big league history who has forgotten.
No. It happens multiple times a season.
But you just wonder, the excuse me, running to third when a ball hit to the left side of the infield is, I don't know where that comes from. Not sliding into second on a stolen base attempt, I don't know where that comes from either.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I don't know either, Al. Frankly, if this winning streak is a coincidence or not, based on what happened, but I do commend Hinch for doing what he did.
Yeah.
I would push back on you a little bit, because in the sense that I wish that he would not have put him in the starting lineup the next day. I think that would have really sent more of a message. But on the other hand, it's easzy for me to say because I don't have to manage the guy, and
right.
Has been around.
For it wasn't. He put him in a cleanup,
and then, like I say, he's not the first guy who's done that. So I guess I'm okay with that. But guys like Haas and Veerling, who are hardly entrenched stars in the game, but yet should know better.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. I think if you're in any job, if you make boneheaded mistakes, you should feel some sort of repercussion for it. You should be, held accountable, and I think that's what this is all about is accountability. At the end of the day, but but these things happen now when you're 2-9. You're usually 2-9 for a reason, and these things happen when you're 2-9. These things don't happen when you're 9-2.
Right.
They happen when you're 2-9, and just because it's a symptom of why you're 2-9.
Right.
And that's what 2-9 teams do. So that there's that. But it's funny you mentioned the Jim Leyland thing from 2006. I remember that you're right. That got a lot of traction. I believe it was an Easter Sunday game, if I'm not mistaken. It was against Cleveland at Detroit, and you're right. It was a getaway day, and you're right that the Tigers sleptwalked through the game, and you're right that Leyland lost his shit. And but hey, these managers, by the way, I mean, they've been around the game for so long. They've seen so many things happen.
Right.
There comes a time where they're allowed to have a bad day too. They're allowed to, when they see something like that happen, maybe 9 times out of 10, they don't respond that way. They don't react that way. But maybe it's that 10th time. And the Baez thing happened right after the Veerling and the Haas thing happened too. So they all happened right around at the same time. So Hinch probably just got fed up.
Yeah.
I don't know that he would have done that with Baez if the team was in a winning streak and the Haas thing and the Veerling thing had never happened at all.
Right.
Because they were losing and because we just saw Haas do what he did and Veerling did what he did, I think Hinch said, look, enough is enough. I mean, I get it. Anybody can make a mental error for sure. But, 3 errors mental errors like that in successive nights is just, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and one thing that's worth bringing up, because I know fans are like, well, how come they don't do this all the time? And I remember Jim Leyland said, you can do it once. You can get away with that once.
Right.
Where the shock, where you come in there, shock and awe, so to speak, but you get to do it once. If you start going to that over and over again,
right.
They start to ignore it because they've seen it before. So I wouldn't anticipate very more these kind of, I don't even want to call it an outburst, but I would not expect to see very many, if any, public comeuppances or a very public move like pulling a guy in the middle of a game type thing come up very often, if ever. No, I think he saw this is with the spot to do it, with the player to do it. Now is the time, and it worked, at least for the time being. The team did need to be shook up a little bit, Greg. I mean, they were things were being, and they're still not a good offensive team. I mean, I brought up the stats. They have only 3 guys with an above 700 OPS, and who's leading the team in OPS is Kerry Carpenter, who, if you ask me, he should be the everyday DH and you leave Miguel Cabrera on the bench, maybe bring him out once a week. You wheel him out there or something once a week or something.
Right.
Yeah, so you had that walk-off nine hopper through the middle and won a game a few days ago, which people lost shit about. But yeah, whatever. But Kerry Carpenter is the man who should be DHing every day. He's a threat to go yard at every at-bat. He is what we were hoping, at least this year so far. He's the guy we were hoping Spencer Torkelson was going to be. Torkelson is still, the jury's still out. He had a home run today. He did hit the ball hard a couple times today. I was able to watch some of the game. I didn't get home till a couple innings into the game. But right now, they got guys that still aren't, say what about Baez? He still only has a 500 OPS.
Right.
Matt Verley, a 584 OPS. Cabrera, 544 OPS. This team, Torkelson, 545. This is going into today anyway. This is still a team that is very limited at best offensively. And this is great. They're around 500. They're 7-10 now after today. But this is still a team that, on their best day, might win 75 games. I mean, it's nice that they're playing some entertaining baseball right now, but it's still not a good team. And I would not get my hopes up that this is the team we're going to see every day. I still think they're closer to the 2-9 Tigers than they're just one that went 5-1. But that's baseball as well. Every bad team has stretches like this.
Right. No, right. Exactly. Yeah. That's what makes it such a great. That's why the 162 game thing just fascinates me, because you're right. Teams, the 1975 Tigers, who lost 19 in a row, lost 102 games. Believe it or not, had a 9-game winning streak that year. Yeah. That's what happens. Yeah. And really, 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 really good teams have losing streaks. That's why it's such a long grind.
Yes.
So I'm with you. They're not a good team. They're not. And they won some games, and it always depends too. That's what Jim Leyland used to say. Yeah. It's not necessarily who you play, but when you play them.
Exactly.
And you catch them on a
momentum is the next day's starting pitcher and all that.
Yeah, and you catch the Giants, for example, scuffling, and then the Guardians come in here, and it's just, that's just the way it is. Over 162 games, you can't be on all the time, and you're not going to be bad all the time. There's going to be some games where you're going to look like you're a pretty good, decent team. Yeah. And a lot of times that's largely based on your pitching. You mentioned the momentum being tomorrow's starting pitcher. If you pitch well, and don't drop the ball, you're going to look like a big league team. Yeah. But when you start making base running mistakes, dropping the ball, can't get guys out, can't throw strikes, then you look like the Bad News Bears.
Yeah, to put mildly. Yeah, and Mark and Walter Matthau isn't going to bail you out. So
right,
he might give you a beer, but other than that, oh, I guess what should be one other thing I'd like to mention about the Tigers. I forgot to put this in the show notes, but the pitch clock, the doubleheader on Monday. The second game was 1:50.
Yes.
The first game was maybe like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yes.
They started the doubleheader at 1:10. It was over before 6. That's how, and I saw people complaining about this. And the people complaining, Greg, are, I think, people who are too young to remember that's how baseball used to be played.
Right.
Where a 2.5 hours was about 2:20 was your typical ball game, not 3 hours, not 3:20, or if you're watching a Yankees-Boston game, 5 hours. Right. So it was awesome. The pit. I am not a fan of Rob Manfred. The guy's an awful, awful human being. But it kind of reminds me of, what's the Onion article? The worst person just made a great point. This is Rob Manfred's. If the only good thing he's done as commissioner is install and enforce the pitch clock, and for that matter, the batter clock, where they have 8 seconds to get into the box. These 2 to 2.5 hour games, perfect. I love it. And that doubleheader, I think, is just like proof of concept. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm take 3.5 hours. No reason.
No, I agreed. Absolutely agree. 150. I didn't see the game, but I saw the time.
That was Eduardo Rodriguez through 8 innings of shutout ball. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I would like to call. How there's a Maddox where they say it's a complete game shut. It's a complete game shutout with under 100 pitches. I would call a complete game under 2 hours a Fidrich, personally.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, exactly. Because that's what Mark Fidrich used to do. Get the ball,
Absolutely.
throw the ball, get the ball, throw the ball.
Yeah.
All right. All right. With that, jerk of the week, not jerk of the week. We're not to that point yet. Good Lord. I'm rushing things. Birthday game question. Question 3.
Sure. Lefty, 1988 Cy Young winner in the American League, World Series MVP in 1987. Went to the Mets from 89 to 91. Born in New York. His nickname, and this might not give away, I hope it helps.
Yeah.
The nickname was Sweet Music.
You know, I have an idea because I keep thinking, okay, there's Gary Gaetti and there's Trent Herbeck.
Yeah.
You know, those guys. I hated those teams. I hated them teams.
Right.
I know who it is, but I cannot think of the name for the life of me. Who is it? Tell me.
It's Frank Viola.
Oh, Frank Viola. Yeah, God. That brings back memories. Frank Viola. I haven't thought of Frank Viola since 1988, probably.
Yeah, for a while there, he was one of the premier pitchers in all of baseball, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but you know, why I didn't realize, because I blanked that 1987 Twins team out of my memory.
I don't blame you.
You know, that is
not blame you.
Of all my years of Detroit fandom, that is the most disappointed I've ever been, was the Tigers losing that series. Yeah. And those goddamn whistles and towels at the damn Metrodome. That, you know, they should, that I'm one of the happiest days of my life. I'm okay, it's hyperbole a little bit, but it's when they tore down the Metrodome, because that place was a dope. I hated that place. All right. With that, Greg, I'm willing to pay for the bobblehead, so we'll talk after the show.
Okay.
All right. A little bit of Lions talk, and then we'll finish up with the Red Wings. Lions traded Jeff Okudah to the Falcons.
They did.
It seemed like the writing was on the wall for Okudah, Greg, when the Lions added 3 starting caliber free agents in starting caliber defensive backs in free agency, and the rumors were swirling that the team was not going to pick up Okudah's 5th-year contract option. And it really looked like they weren't expecting. Well, Okudah was benched at the end of last year. He was being outplayed by the undrafted 3rd-year guy, Jerry Jacobs, who was getting a lot of playing time over him. Well, this all came to a head last week when the Lions finally essentially hit the last check mark on the Jeff Okudah is a bust list by sending him to the Falcons for a 5th-round draft pick in this year in the next week's draft. And the other plus being that move picked up the Lions $5 million in cap space, as the Falcons picked up the entirety of the contract. So this is one of those things where you kind of saw it coming, and the other thing that plays into it is that the current Lions regime had no ties to him. This is Quinn Trisha's last gasp draft pick.
Right.
So I was not at all surprised, and to be honest, I'm not as surprised that all he was worth was a 5th-round draft pick. I'm surprised he even got that.
Yeah, you know, I know that it's easy now to trash the pick, and at the time the Lions did need help at cornerback.
Well, let's bring in City. He's good at trashing picks.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But you know what? It was hard. It was still hard, though, to me to justify that high of a pick on a cornerback.
Yep.
And as highly regarded as Jeff Okudah was, and he wasn't.
Yeah, he was a consensus. Top 5.
So it's hard because he was consensus. It's hard to now go back and say, well, gee whiz, what were they thinking?
Yeah.
So I look at it less as it was the wrong pick to begin with, and more as I'm glad the Lions are cutting bait when they can, because I don't know now, after they've made the moves they made in the free agency realm, and with the draft, of course, coming up a little over a week, they've got lots of ways to address that, and Jeff Okudah will be probably long forgotten by the time next season comes to a close, and so on. So, you know, I'm not really going to jump on the gosh, it was a bad pick by Bob Quinn. That's low hanging fruit to me, because it wasn't like, I don't think that was a case, even though Bob Quinn could be one of those I'm the smartest guy in the room type of guys. I don't look at the Okudah pick as being that. I think that the Lions needed help in the secondary at the time, and Okudah was highly regarded, highly regarded. Now it's fair to say, look, if you want to say now, okay, back then hey, it's not 2020 where I'm coming from. I was always a little bit leery. Okay, I'll buy that. I mean, I'll buy it because it is a little bit tricky, risky to take a cornerback that high. I will grant you, but I'm not going to dog Quinn for the pick. I'm really not, because you look at Okudah's rookie year. It was cut short by injury, and he was learning a new system, and he was brand new, and so forth. The coaching situation was volatile. There was a lot of volatility on the team. There was
also a pandemic in the middle of all that.
Right. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
And then he comes in the second year. He works real hard. He comes in the second year, new coach and so forth. And then what does he do? He pops his Achilles first week 1. Yeah. So now he's behind the 8 ball again. And even though you've got a new regime in there and so forth, he's still got to get himself physically ready and mentally ready too to play football again. So now he comes back, and he comes year 3 in 2022, and he has a pretty decent first half. He had, some high moments, high spots, and you say, okay, well, maybe this kid can be something. Maybe he can be a starter in the league. Maybe he'll never live up probably to the number 3 overall pick, but who cares at this point? That ship's long sailed. Now you just want him to be a productive starting cornerback. Okay,
right.
That's the goal at that point. Well, in the first half of the season, it looked like he could be a guy that you can rely on. Then he had a second half slump, if you will, and it looked like, well, maybe he's regressing. And but he's one of those guys, Al, that if the Lions had decided to ride with him one more year and bring him back in 2023, I would have been okay with that. I really would have. He would have just had to have earned his way. He would have found, of course, the competition this fall in training camp, this summer in training camp, to be a whole lot different than any competition he'd ever had since he's been in Detroit. When he was drafted in 2020, he was almost virtually handed a starting position.
Right.
In 2021, it was almost the same thing, because they were so thin at cornerback, and they were really relying on him to be the player, or at least somewhat the player that they thought he could be in 2020 when they drafted him. This is in 2022, same thing. He was a starter. So if he would have come back in 2023 to Detroit, he would have come back to a much different competitive situation. And you really would have found out, I think, in training camp, if, barring injury, you would have found out in training camp if he indeed was going to be something, even a nickelback or something that they could put it, someone they could rely upon in the secondary. Right. Because the competition was going to be so stiff, as it turns out. And that's not even considering who they may be drafting this week or next week. Right. So that would have been okay with me. So what they decided to do instead, and this is why, I know people look at the 5th round pick and say, geez, what a fall from grace. But really, first of all, that pick is for this year. That's the first thing. Yeah. Secondly, again, cutting bait early on a guy like that to a team that's not in your division, I'm okay with. Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with that. I don't want to live in the past and say, geez, he was 3rd overall. Now we're only getting a 5th round draft pick for him. Who cares at this point? At this point, you're making a decision on whether or not you think he can be helpful to this team. Yeah. And if you don't think that he can be, and you want to roll the dice on a 5th round pick in 2023, go ahead. Yeah. I mean, I know that apparently it's come out that the Lions are going to be paying. I think I read this. The Lions are going to be paying some of Okudah's salary to the Falcons, which made the deal from the Atlanta standpoint, of course, much more amenable. Right. So now the Falcons get some of his salary paid, and they get a guy that who knows, maybe goes somewhere. They say that he wanted to play in Atlanta to begin with. And so, we'll see. But I have no problems with this, and I'm not going to jump on. There's a lot of things to get on Bob Quinn about, believe me, than this. This is just one of those things that happened. And I think when you start to think about all the things that I just mentioned that were going against Okudah, it's almost not really that surprising that what happened to him, aside from the injury, what happened to him happened to him. Yeah. It's I think that the best thing to say about this is that the Lions didn't linger. They said we got better players. Right. Change the scenery is probably best for everybody involved. Let's just cut bait.
sunk cost fallacy and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Time to move on. Let's move on. Sure. If they weren't going to keep him for the 5th year, why keep him for the 4th? So
Sure.
And we'll see what happens on next Thursday when there's talk of a cornerback being drafted number 6. So we'll see what happens. 18, I could be a little more. I find a little more palatable. 6, unless that guy's the next Sauce Gardner. I'm kind of iffy on.
Well,
that.
Again, when a guy comes into a situation like Okudah came into in Detroit, there were all sorts of, by that time, by 2020,
right,
the whole Patricia thing was becoming untenable. I mean, even before they even kicked off the first game.
Yeah.
And now, and they were so thin in the secondary at the time that Okudah almost had to come in and be like the number 1 cornerback right from the get-go.
Yeah. When you trade 2 Pro Bowl defensive backs,
right. That's the other thing. That's the other thing.
Yeah. That was the stupidest goddamn. Damn, that regime was dumb.
Yeah.
God. Yeah. And for all the praise that Sheila Ford-Hamp gets right now, she should be continually criticized for that damn win or else ultimatum, which led to the drafting of Jeff Okudah rather than taking Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, or someone like that.
Right.
So, I'm so glad that there's positive vibes around this team right now. At the point where when you trade the 3rd overall draft pick from a few years ago, people say, "Yeah, that makes sense." So, all right. Since I blew the birthday game, so we don't have any more questions from that. Frank Viola, God damn it. Let's finish on the Red Wings, Greg, because they finished pretty badly, much like the Pistons did. Red Wings wrapped up the season about it was last week. 35, 37, and 10. I hate the scoring. I hate this loser point crap. But regardless of that, they had 80 points, which I believe was they were up 6 over last year. 7th in the NHL Atlantic Division. They missed the playoffs again. But the wheels fell off the end of the year. They reached a high water mark. They were at 28, 21, and 8. They sat in a wild card spot for one day, and then the winged wheels went flying off. They had a 6-game losing streak immediately after that. Yzerman sold off what he could at the trade deadline, and the Wings finished the season winning only 7 of their final 24 games. No, that's tanking, essentially. And in that, they did guarantee themselves a spot in the lottery. I think they have like a 4% chance or something like that of winning the top pick, but whatever. They're in the lottery. But more interesting in all this is during the postmortems, during the postseason interviews, and as we're now 4 years in Steve Yzerman's rebuild, and Yzerman put it as, it's gone okay. But he was also kind of blunt, though. It's interesting both Derek Lalonde and Yzerman admitted they did not see this group as a playoff caliber team. They probably were going to sell off what they could at the trade deadline, regardless of where they stood, even though at the time they were still literally on the playoff bubble. So Yzerman, had said all the right things. I'd love to be further ahead in the process. We're still 4 years in. We need to draft well. We need to accumulate more draft picks. Time will tell. It's a slow process. But we're 4 seasons in. This is still, at best, a bubble team. And that's if everything goes right. So I've said it before, Greg. This team is in no man's land. They are not bad enough to get high in the lottery, and they're not good enough to make the playoffs. So Steve Yzerman's got his work cut out for him, because they desperately need, and I know we've said this in the past, they desperately need a couple of impact offensive players. Guys that can get you 40 goals, maybe 50 goals. When your best offensive player is Dylan Larkin, and he is a very good player, but he's not an elite player. I don't know what to say about this team, Greg, because they really need elite talent, and they are not in the position to get it unless Yzerman pulls a rabbit out of his hat with all these draft picks that he's accumulated and makes some sort of blockbuster trade. But who gives up an elite winger, a guy who's going to get you 40 goals for draft picks? I honestly don't know what Eisman's going to do unless he gets lucky in the draft. But then that's 2 or 3 years off when he drafted.
Yeah, this isn't baseball where you can flip prospects for an established player, or and frankly, Al, I can't even remember the last time the NHL saw a quote unquote blockbuster trade. I mean, those things don't happen anymore.
Right.
They really don't.
Like when the Wings got Paul Coffey, for example.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, those kinds of trades just
Brendan Shanahan, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
right.
It doesn't happen.
Right, it doesn't happen, and the thing that I do like though about Yzerman and Lalonde, by the way, Coach Lalonde, is their brutal at times honesty.
Yeah, and their press conference was very, very honest. I think as to where they thought the state of the team.
Right, when you finally pin him down, Yzerman, and get him talking, he won't. Now he won't do it in a nasty way.
No,
but he won't mince any words. He'll say, "Look, we weren't very good. I didn't think we were going to make the playoffs." Lalonde said, "I'll be honest with you now. When I took the job, I didn't think we were a playoff team." Now that's not necessarily going out on a limb. I'm not shocked that he would say that, but I'm happy to hear a coach say that, because so many times they don't, for whatever reason. They want to try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, or they just don't want to go. They don't want to. Sometimes that's a bridge too far for some coaches. But when you've got and that's because a guy like Lalonde strikes me as someone, even though this is his first head coaching job in the NHL, he strikes me as somebody who's very comfortable in his own skin, and he comes from a winning organization with Tampa. And he obviously has a relationship with Yzerman going back to those days. And so he's speaking like someone who is comfortable with where he's at right now. So he can say those kinds of things. Not that what he said was anything that any true Red Wings fan who really follows this team would contradict. I can't imagine any really reasonable Red Wings fan saying, "Wait a minute, hold on, coach. What do you mean you didn't think this was a playoff team?" Well, come on now. Really? Yeah. Did you really think that the Wings were a playoff team? I didn't think they were a playoff team when they were in the playoffs for that one day. I thought, well, this is going to somehow something's going to happen. And of course, no, I didn't think they were going to take that pratfall in Ottawa in those 2 back-to-back games either. But and Yzerman, same thing. I think he said something to the effect of, there's some days I walk away from the rink and I think things are really going well. Yeah. And there are other times where I walk away from the rink and I say, "Gosh, is this ever going to end?" And he's speaking for a lot of us when he says that, but that's coming from his heart. And I truly believe that he thinks that way. That he has these days where he thinks things are going, and that's why he said, overall, I would say it's okay. Things are going okay. Do I wish we were further along? Yes. Now back to your question though, which is the $1 million question, which is what does this team do when like you said, they need elite talent, and they're not, unless they get, like you said, they fight a diamond in the rough. Right. And we talked about this several weeks ago. If you're not drafting top 3 in the NHL, you're going to get a good player, of course. Are you getting a franchise-altering player? Probably not, because there's so few of those players that come out in any given draft that they're snatched up right away. So, I mean, you're going to get a good player. Of course you will. Now, will that player be, and he should be eventually a piece, but these guys like the McDavids of the world and the Matthews of the world and guys like that, and Crosby and guys like that, when they come out in the draft, they immediately contribute. There no minor leagues, no waiting, we'll see in 3 years. Right away, first training camp, starting lineup. And they're in there and they're scoring 40, 50 goals right off the top. There's no, well, he's getting acclimated to the league. No, they get right away. They start popping the pucks in the net immediately. And that's the kind of player that just is not available if you don't draft really, 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 really high, or if you swing some sort, and you hit the nail on the head. Who's going to trade a guy like who has a guy like that? Who would trade a guy like that? Right. For what the Red Wings could offer? It's unfathomable to me. So what I don't know the answer. The answer to your question, the reason I say it's $1 million question is nobody has the answer. Nobody really knows where Yzerman's going to find this talent. The only thing you can hope for is that he finds a sum of talent. Yeah. that as a sum is a working a winning unit. Now, because you can be successful in the NHL and maybe get 90 to 100 points without a future Hall of Famer on your roster. You can do that. That's true. You can.
Right.
But what's hamstringing this team, though, and nobody's really talking about this yet, although they should be, is the goaltending. The goaltending situation is not helping. It's not helping. I've said this till people think I'm a broken record. Ville Husso was not acquired to play 55 games. He wasn't. Yeah. He was acquired to share the net with Nedeljkovic. Now they've got, to me, they've got a goaltending problem again. Wait, I don't know where they're going to come up. They don't have really anybody that's in the minors that's NHL ready at this point. I don't know what they're going to do there. That's another, because the goaltending did not help them. Let's face it. I mean, yes, we all know they don't have that elite talent that you and I keep talking about, but they could have won more games if the goaltending was better. And when you need top. That's the other thing you need. Yeah. By the way, to win in this league, you don't win the Stanley Cup with average goaltending. You don't. I don't care if you've got 20 McDavids on your team. If you have average goaltending, you're not going to win the Stanley Cup. You need good, not just good, great goaltending to win the Stanley Cup, and to be to go deep in the playoffs. Your goalie has to be. And how many times have we seen that in Detroit? How many times? Let's flip it around. How many times have we seen, Al, playoff runs with really talented Red Wings teams? Yeah, hamstrung by bad goaltending. Yeah. Several times. Bob Senza ring up this. Yes. Okay.
Bob, so, I'd rather it didn't, but yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, you cannot, in the years that the Red Wings have won the Stanley Cup, Chris Osgood was stellar. Dominic Hasek was stellar. Mike Vernon was stellar. Right. You can't win the cup with a guy in the net that's going to have a 900 save percentage. You have to have a guy with a 920 or 930 save percentage. You have to have guys that'll make big stops at crucial moments. And the Red Wings, the more the season went on, Husso wore out. Yeah. And his numbers ended up, if you look at the body of work for the 2023 season for him, it was mediocre. Yeah. It wasn't very good. He was just another NHL. It was a zero. I've been using this term a lot lately. A zero war goaltender is what he was. Yeah. And, some good games, some bad games. He'd stand on his head a couple of games, let in 5 or 6 goals the next game. And that's not helping. That is not. And nobody's really talking about the goaltending situation. Right. But I can guarantee you that Steve Yzerman knows about the goaltending situation. I know that Derek Lalonde knows about it. But again, what's the answer? It's probably easier maybe to find a goalie in a trade. I don't know, though. I don't know, because goalies, again, I mean, if you've got a really good goalie, why are you going to trade him? Why are you going to trade the guy? I don't. When you get these kinds of players, the 50 goal scorers and the elite goalies, you're not going to trade them. Why? Right, exactly. Why would you? Go find your own goalie. Go find your own 50 goal scorer. Yeah. Don't come here. I'm not going to trade you, my guy. Why would you? Yeah, yeah. For all the goodwill Yzerman has developed, he's I think the best way he's at a crossroads right now with this team. Yeah. Right. Where does he go especially if the draft capital he's built up? He's got, I think, 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks in this draft alone. So it's I'm losing patience of all these teams. God damn it! Do something. Give us especially when it really drives it home, Greg, is when I got the NHL playoffs on TV next to me. Yeah. And watching the playoffs, both the NHL and the NBA playoffs, I missed that. That was so much fun watching teams you care about playing games that mean something. I mean, like when I was talking to City, but how much fun they're having in Sacramento right now. They are losing their minds, and they're having a hell of a time with this, light the beam stuff. It's awesome. And when's the last time we've had anything remotely close to that in Detroit? Remotely close to that. I'm just going to use one example because I don't want to go crazy here and spend a whole lot of time on this. But the one example I will throw at you is the Tampa Bay's current goalie. Yeah, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation. Vasilevsky. Okay. Yeah. He was Yzerman drafted him, by the way. Yzerman drafted him in the first round, 19th pick, 19th overall in 2012. Okay. And this guy Vasilevsky now, if you look at his numbers
Mhm.
since he's been in Tampa, he debuted in 2014 as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
He has posted goals. His goals against is a career is 2.5. He's got a career save percentage of 919 with highs of 925 and mixed in there a couple of times. This is a world-class goalie. This is a goalie that you can win the Stanley, and they have won the Stanley Cup one. He's won. He's been on the All-Star team. He's won Vezina. I mean, that's a goalie. That's a guy that can play 60 games, by the way, 50, 60 games, not miss a beat. And this is a guy Yzerman drafted in 2012, 19th overall. Okay. So again, that's another thing the Wings don't have is top flight goaltending. They've been trying to, I don't know how many years now, going back to the waning days of Jimmy Howard, the Wings have not had, top flight goaltending. And that's another reason. That's another reason why, I think that the 7-year playoff less stretch is almost as much to do with goaltending than it is anything else. And nobody's really talking about that. They're focused, and they should. I understand the focus is on the front. I get it. The focus is on the forwards, and they don't have elite talent at the forwards. I get it, and they should be talking about that. That's true. But they're not going to win. I'll tell you this right now. They're not going to win without top flight goaltending. I don't care what kind of talent he drafts or trades for. If they don't have top flight goaltending, they're not going to win.
Yeah,
because their talent overall isn't good enough to overcome the goaltending that they've been getting. And the reason why they were winning earlier on, and they were over 500 for the entire 2022 portion of the schedule, and deep in a month or two into the 2023 portion of the schedule, was because they were getting good goaltending.
Yeah,
Husso was playing probably above his head. He was logging a lot of minutes. I was concerned about that, and my concern turned out to be true. And then he wore down, and as he went down the tube, so did the Red Wings. So I don't want to hear that it's only about getting elite talent, because it is, but it's also about the goaltending, which has been not good enough.
Yeah. It's Iceman better hope that Sebastian Kosa is his Vasilevsky. That's where you use that first round draft pick on a goalie, and supposedly he played this year in Toledo. Next year he's supposed to be in Grand Rapids. Now, he's still at least a couple years out from playing in Detroit. But that's the thing with goalies, It's I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But you're right. No, if you can't score, you better be able to stop the damn puck. And right now, that's been an issue for the Wings. It's just frustrating. And I miss watching teams I root for play important games. It's been so long.
Well, the other thing too, Al, is that you don't see teams draft goalies a lot in the first round. I mean, that doesn't happen a whole lot. So when you spend a 19th overall pick on a goalie, you better be pretty sure that he's going to be the goalie of the future. And that's exactly what Vasilevsky ended up being. And this guy, he could go to the Hall of Fame. He really could.
Oh yeah.
He's only 28 years old. He's won 1 million games, and he's got like how many shutouts here already? He's got 32 shutouts.
Yeah.
And you can see he's 28. He's only going to get, these guys, these goalies.
A good goalie will last well into his 30s.
Oh, right. Yeah. And so this guy Vasilevsky is gonna play probably at least another 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, because I just brought up the stats, a little comparison. Husso's, as you brought up the save percentage, his career save percentage is 9.04. Vasilevsky's is 9.19.
That is average.
Yeah,
that's average.
That's
900 is 900.
And Vasilevsky had an off year for him. He was only 915 this year. He wasn't an all-star this year after like 5 straight all-star appearances. So, but it's. I'm curious to see what he does in this draft, because the Wings desperately need impact guys either in the net or putting it in the net. They need impact guys, and they just don't have it right now. All right, we're probably running long because I think our interview with City was a good 45 minutes. So let's get to the end of the show. Greg, who's your jerk of the week?
Well, I don't know if you're not on Twitter, so maybe you didn't see this, but Blue Jays relief pitcher Anthony Bass, tweeted out he was on a flight, and he tweeted out trying to shame the flight attendants on this flight because he said my 22-month, my pregnant wife, 22-week pregnant wife, whatever he said, was told that she had to clean up the mess that our children made with popcorn in the under the seat. So he tweets this out. I guess he thinks he's going to get a bunch of people rallying behind him, and he got ratioed. People don't know what that means. Ratioed means you tweet out something you think is going to be popular, and it turns out to go against you. He got dragged mercilessly.
Yeah, isn't what they say? Ratios like there's a lot of retweets but no likes. Essentially,
yes. Yeah. He got completely massacred, and then he posted out something and said. A follow-up tweet to that said, thanks for the support, everybody, which I don't know what support he's talking about, but he said, thanks for the support. The airline is going to handle the matter with the flight attendant privately.
Yeah.
So now everybody's thinking, oh my God, he's going to get this poor girl. I mean, maybe it wasn't a girl, maybe it was a guy. This poor flight attendant fired. Well, first of all, they're not going to fire a flight attendant over this, especially when they're hemorrhaging flight attendants. That's the first thing.
Right.
But the spirit of their concern was valid, was that, oh my God, what's going to happen to this poor flight attendant now? So everybody ratioed him, and his ERA at the time of this tweet was 7.11. So what was trending on Twitter for a while was 7.11.
Oh, really?
And it was trending on Twitter because everybody was calling him Mr. 7.11. And he got completely dragged on Twitter. But it was just a matter of he being this, I was just talking a while ago about fans not being able to wrap their heads around salaries. Well, here's an example, though, of the other way around, where a guy's making a lot of money who thinks he's above it all and thinks he's going to shame an airline or a flight attendant because his wife now has to clean up. The horror of having to clean up after their own kid. Why don't they have the flight attendants do this? And he even tweeted out a picture.
Yeah.
I don't know who does this, by the way. Tweeted out a picture of his kid seated in this airline seat now with all this popcorn on the floor. So now he's putting his kid's face on Twitter, which I would never do, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
And so the whole thing was just bizarre. And so I clearly, obviously, my jerk of the week is Anthony Bass. But my gosh, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's I've been spending a lot of time on airliners the past couple of years, flying to Florida.
Right.
Oh God, people are so awful on airplanes.
They are.
No, from like wearing flip-flops and tank tops to shit like this. So I think I'm glad people saw this the way I would see the same thing. Flight attendants, their job is as horrible as it is. And then when you have a professional baseball player dragging him through the mud for shit his family did.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's hilarious. Mr. 7.11. I love that. That's hilarious. All right. My jerk of the week, Greg. Well, at first I was thinking about going with Draymond Green because you know what they say. The NBA playoffs have finally started when Draymond stomps on somebody, which he did last night or 2 nights ago. He got suspended. But I wanted to go back a little further because this happened. I was actually in Florida when the women's Final Four, the NCAA championship game, was played between LSU and Iowa, and specifically was it the Angel Reese Caitlin Clark doing the John Cena you don't see me hand move, and at the end of the game because Angel Reese did it to Caitlin Clark, and Clark wasn't even looking at the time. After. And Clark, for what it's worth, my God, she makes she was just throwing. She is, once she crosses half court, I would not put it past her throwing up a three, and making it. It was amazing to watch her shoot. But regardless, LSU won big in the championship game, and Reese was caught on camera doing the John Cena thing to Clark. And all hell, I'm sure you saw all hell broke loose on social media, and in the news media, calling her out. And all of a sudden it was like, don't you guys know Caitlin Clark was doing the same damn thing? She was trash talking too. And then that's kind of when all of a sudden, is this racially biased because Reese is black and Clark is white? Or because, it really got kind of ugly, saying, well, if she's getting called out for it, why wasn't the other one getting called out for it? We're doing the same exact damn thing. The only difference being that Reese was caught doing it at the end of the title game after a big victory. So my jerk of the week is anybody who got uptight about this, because you know what basketball players do, Greg? They trash talk. Have you ever met a basketball player who didn't trash talk? They all,
Yeah.
you know who's like they say who was like the most legendary trash talker of all time? Larry Bird.
Oh yeah, people. Of course.
You know,
absolutely.
So
yeah,
you know, even today, you got guys like Kevin Durant and crap like this that constantly talk trash on the court. And after the fact, Caitlin Clark's like, I wasn't offended. You know, she beat me. They kicked her ass. I was doing it. She did it. Whatever. It's basketball. Yeah. So my jerk of the week is anybody who got up in arms and offended over college basketball players trash talking. It's
yeah.
You know, it was that 24-hour news cycle thing where it was all news for that 24 hours. Even Joe Biden got into it for some reason. So yeah, that's my jerk of the week. Anybody who gets upset about trash talk, because if you've ever played sports at any level of decent competition, you know, like at junior high school, you know, rec league, whatever.
Yeah.
Trash talk happens and you accept it. Know what they say? You don't want to get trash talk? Don't let them beat you. So that's my jerk of the week. Anybody who got upset about that, because it was just talk about a tempest in a teapot, that was exactly that.
And a lot of times those trash talkers, it comes back to bite them anyway. And they get their comeuppance anyway.
Exactly. So I would not be surprised to see Caitlin Clark just tear up the NCAA next year, because you know, I can count all the women's games I've probably watched on two hands, at least when it comes to a tournament. I've seen some finals.
Yeah.
But man, watching her, she is entertaining as all hell. I loved watching her play because she is not afraid to shoot, and you got to love that in a ball player. I mean, she's very a Steph Curry type on the women's side. It was just fun to watch, and it's going to be something to keep an eye on next year. But with that, let's get the hell out of here, Greg, because I'm tired. I haven't done this in a month, and I may need to lay down after this. So, so why don't you get out the thank yous and who we have coming up on the next show and the social media and all that fun stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, City Hall, for I liked Feisty City tonight.
He was feisty. Good Lord, he was full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah, he was. That was fun. So thank you to him. May 2nd, 2 weeks from about 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be talking with Mike Shoddy, who will give us his opinion about the NFL draft, and obviously we'll take it more from a Lions perspective. The draft will be very fresh when he comes on the show. We'll talk to him. Pay attention to my new Substack, gregeno.substack.com. Please subscribe. I would appreciate that. I want to thank my lovely wife, Sharon, for putting up for this nonsense, and you, Big Al, for making, in this case, Wednesday nights so gosh.
Oh, and one question. How's Bean? Because I didn't hear him tonight.
Oh, he's a little angel. Just a little angel.
Of course he's an angel. What else would he be? All right. Oh, God. I want to give a shout out to you, Greg. Thank you for putting up with my traveling around the country, and it caused us to miss the occasional show. But, and also taking time out of your very busy schedule to talk sports, and for getting all these fun guests. Always looking forward to see who you pull out of this week's hat. So, as you said, our friend Mike Shoddy will be with us on the next episode. I'll give a shout out to Linda, who is busy saving lives in the ER tonight. She is working, putting in her 12 hours. With that, though, let's get the hell out of here. So if you want to listen, as they like to say, like, share, subscribe. If you want to do that, you can find the podcast on the usual aggregators such as Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're on Stitcher. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Play. Amazon Music. We're on Deezer. We're at thekneejerks.net. That is our homepage, where I'll have the links to all of Greg's writing, including his new Substack. And, of course, if the links to anything we've talked about, links to guests, also links to the show itself, where you can download the MP3 and avoid Apple and all that stuff altogether, if that's what you want to do. All right. Other than that, I think it's time to get the hell out of here. So 2 weeks from now, we'll have NFL draft to talk about. We'll have probably some NHL and NBA playoff stuff. Who knows what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks? And, of course, there's always going to be Tigers baseball. But until that time, 2 weeks from now, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody.